they're college students, and do you remember what I told you about college students? I'm sorry to distract you. What did I say? Well, what I told him is that we've forgotten how to play, because it does sort of happen as we get older. I don't know if he was super excited to hear that news. We've decided he's not. So we're going to we're going to have a play session. This could go any millions of ways, right? So just be in the experience, see what strikes you, and then we'll have a conversation. I do need a timekeeper. I'm thinking I think we'll try for 15 minutes, and then I'll give him a warning, and if he wants to go longer, we'll go longer.
Got it.
We'll go 5 minutes longer, so it'll be between 15 and 20, and we'll let him decide at the 15-minute mark if we're going to go 5
15.
minutes. Does that make sense? And we did have a practice session, which was good for me to have a practice session. It's just so you all can catch me based on what you've learned when I'm not doing it the way you remember, because guess who hasn't done this in a really, really long time? So thank you all for getting me back into it. Just before we get started, so we get a little bit of a intro, what do you all remember about when I came? What struck you that time, just so we get a little, kind of get this way of operating in our minds again?
Just letting the child lead the session.
Right, letting the child lead the session, yep.
Do you remember what theory we were playing around with then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
So
non-directive.
this is child-centered. We're going to do child-centered play therapy today. There are lots of different kinds. There's more directive kinds, which I used to use both. But I think as an intro to really understand person-centered. I just want to tell you this has got, you all by coming here has me thinking that I do want to think about taking this kit. This is a standard play therapy kit for filial fish. This is a portable kit. So a room would have a lot more options. But these are sort of the very basics. But I'm thinking we could set up a room in DSS for supervised visitation where parents learn the basic, just like you all are learning the basic play therapy skills, so it's a way for them to be with their children and form attachment, because this is part of the playing, this is part of attachment. What else? Yes.
Labeling.
Yes, it's very hard. I'm just going to tell you, it's a little bit getting used to. We did a practice session on Saturday. Yes.
I was going to think about the boundaries that we talked about last time, and how depending on what each kid needs, you kind of have to form it around what the kid needs.
Right, it's usually a redirection, and it's about the thing and not about the behavior, so you try to find a way for the behavior to work. Great, that's a really good point, which is another thing when you're working with parents that I was talking about in the supervised visitation. There's a form of teaching discipline through it, which is focusing more on the context as opposed to something being wrong with what they're doing. Tracking, yes. You'll see a ton of that. Yeah. All right, anything else? Is it coming back to you? Okay. All right, Grove. So this, you'll remember, these are the toys we played with last time. And because they don't know how to play anymore, they did when they were your age, we're just going to play together, and you can show them how to play. And all you get to do is just play, however you want. And I'm going to sit down right here, so you can face me when you want to. All right, so you pick that up. Makes a sound. Or maybe a louder sound. Open that. It's a little stuck. Oh, you figured out where it's stuck?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You did it. You haven't opened that? I'm wondering what's in that box. Found some kitchen stuff. Put those in there. Oh, they're hard. Which way it fits. I like it that way. That way. Like that. And that. Goes up and down. Those out. Open up that. Pull that up. You remembered how to open that. Shaking it, pull that out, pulling that one out. Tossing them. Got them all out. Opening that. Pull it out. You kind of like checkers? They're kind of like checkers. They remind you of checkers.
What do I do?
You're wondering what to do.
What do I do?
You're wondering what to do with those.
Do this?
You want to do it like that?
Well, how do I do it? I don't know.
Something seems confusing. Open that up.
These flowers on my tongue.
You're gonna put one on each side. You don't know how to play that. Look at that sound.
Huh?
Checking that out. Opening.
How do
In there.
Can't fit.
It doesn't fit. You experimented and figured out it doesn't fit. You're gonna get something you need. I love the color. That's so pretty. Moving it. Two. can use that to pull it out. You remember that you did that last time. Squeezing it. You're squeezing it.
Only squeezing it. It makes it flat.
But you made it flat.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I got a thing that can spin.
Your brother has something that spins.
Yeah. It's like this golden finish spinner.
It's a golden fin spinner.
Yeah. Because it can spin kind of fast.
Really fast.
Yeah. Look, it fits.
It fits. You made it fit.
Yeah, kind of. Made it fit. Here we go. We might make it fit.
I'm gonna try that again.
Yeah. Because I didn't get on this side or this side.
You didn't get on that side or this side last time. You want to do that this time.
Yeah. Now I did it.
You did it.
Now I made it like it.
You made it.
It's like a boat.
You made it like a boat.
It's young. It looks like it. Here's the top of it.
I'm wondering where the top is. I'm looking for it.
Anyone? Oh, there it is.
You found it. See if that'll go on.
Well,
It will.
kind of does. It won't.
Well,
So
you discovered that it might not work like that.
I thought it would.
You thought it would, and you tried it and figured out it won't.
Yeah. Now I got to make it like a ball.
So you're gonna make it like a ball.
He's going to do that. Hey.
You made it like a ball, putting it in there like that. Now you're gonna see if it fits. You did it. You made it fit and closed it. Sound. Looking in there.
What was that?
You saw something.
Well, what was it?
You see it there. You're going over there to see if you can see it again.
There's one right there.
You saw it right there?
The yuck. There's one right there.
It's part of the house. Put that in there.
Right there.
It's this straight. This is right. Okay, there we go. You're putting the chairs right there.
Yeah. That chair is a small chair.
And that chair's smaller than the other chair.
Yeah. Or a little than the other chair. It's hard.
Or littler.
Yeah.
Put that on top of closing that. Closing that, making a sound. Make a faster sound.
Yeah, why?
You see the light.
Why was I why?
You're curious about the light in that.
Yeah. Did you get that? What was it?
You're wondering what
What
that
kind
is.
of light was it?
You're wondering what kind of light is in there.
Yeah. What kind of light was in there, baby?
You're curious about that. Sometimes it lights up and sometimes it doesn't.
Um,
Keeps lighting up. When you do that, you're making it light up. Like that. Let's put that in there. On that too. We're at 13 and a half. Checking those things out. Sending that, putting it through there. Pushing it through. Trying it again. Pulling it that way. I should get those for that.
this is like a bowl.
It looks like a bomb to you.
Does it? Does it go?
You're wondering if it is a bomb. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Because it kind of has this.
That part.
Yeah.
Making a sound, you're making it light up.
The light is going so fast.
The light's going fast.
Yeah. Now it's going kind of small fast.
Not going quite as fast and it seems smaller.
Yeah. What's that?
You're wondering what that part is?
Yeah.
Where the light is.
And
Put that down. Open that back up.
just right now. Because I was doing this.
You were doing that?
Yeah, because yeah. And yeah. I'm staying. Now
It's, you're opening it and then it pops out,
yeah.
pops back.
Keep popping.
It keeps popping,
Yeah.
keeps popping back.
Yeah. And pop again.
And pop again.
Try to push it back.
You want to push back. Pressing it there.
Wait, it won't stay.
It won't stay flat.
Yeah. Let's go back and keep on.
You put those on your ears.
Yeah.
Look,
There's 3 knives now.
so there's 3 knives, so you looked at that and thought about the knives over there.
I need one more knife.
You want one more knife?
I need 4 knives. I don't need 4 knives.
You want 4 knives.
Yeah.
Nothing in there.
Yeah, new knife.
You found another one.
We're trying to find another
You
one.
want to find another one?
Yeah, I need another one. I need another one.
You found another one.
Now how many are there?
You're wondering how many knives you have now.
How many is that?
You're wondering how many that is.
What? How many is it? How many is it?
You want me to answer how many?
Yeah.
You know how many knives there are.
4?
4? 4 or 5? You like to put them the same way. You're putting those things on the same side. And that has those too. You're noticing similarities between them.
What are these?
You're wondering what that's called.
What are they? What are they?
You're curious about that.
What are
You're curious about these edges,
they?
these little bits in them.
What are they?
You're wondering what they're called.
What are
Well, you can call them whatever you want to call them.
There's 4.
They're 4.
Yeah. And there's only 2.
And you pulled 2.
We need 3.
You pulled 3, so there are 2 here.
1, 1, 2, 1. No, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3 there.
And 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 there.
And 1, 2, 3, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 there now. You counted to 5.
Now we need this one.
Putting those together.
Um,
4 or 5 spoons.
One, two, two, three, four.
You counted 4 spoons.
One,
You
two.
figured it out. How many spoons by counting?
I need this all the way to it. Okay. Now we start to do that. And we are going to do the nice. And then they will be on. That's mini. This, this mini. One, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1,
Count again.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14, 16, 19, 25, 41,
You counted 41.
and 14.
And you put them in exactly the order you wanted them.
Yeah. It was doing there. This kind of thing.
You're wondering what that is because you just saw that.
And what is it?
You want to know what it is? You can play with that however you want to. You can put it right there.
Oh, no. This one maybe in it.
Maybe it goes there. You want it on top there.
Mhm.
Now that. Put them together. That with it. Put that right there.
And then with the it's a circle.
You made a circle.
But now it's not ready.
And now
Because
it's,
they have to be two.
now it's not.
Because there's only two. We need one. We
You
need two.
need 2 for a circle.
Yeah. We need two.
Put that there. Put them together.
After circle.
Now it's a circle.
Hmm? And then no.
And you pull that up.
Made it.
You made it.
Like that.
When you pulled it up, you made it.
Yeah. No.
Pull it up again. And try it another way. Put that there. You did it that way. Is it a different kind of circle? You put it up that way, so it's a different kind of circle. I'm gonna put that there.
Belongs to this one.
Those 2, that one belongs to that one.
Yeah. We need 2 blues of these. I think we need 2 blues.
You want 2 blues?
Yeah. This and this.
Those two blues like those are 2 blues.
Yeah.
you don't want that circle, you want a different kind.
So I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to find it.
You're looking for it. You're looking for that piece that you want.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
You found it.
Now I need 2 green pieces.
Put the blues there.
Not 2 reds. What is that red? This.
The green.
2 keys.
Found another one.
And this.
That.
And there's 1 more. Yes. Now I know how to make it.
You know how to make it because you made the other one.
Yeah. Because I have 2 greens and 2 blues. Now I need 2 reds.
And after this, you want to do reds.
Yeah. Then,
Put that there. Make that one that way.
yeah. Then I'm gonna make it. Alright. There we go. That's the way the sun hides.
You want to make them the same height.
Yeah. Just right there. Maybe I can go down there. There.
Oh, I remember a lot there, so you're going to move it where you think it'll fall less.
And this.
And do it there.
There.
Put that there. Down top. Putting that one on top of there. That there.
But, I mean,
How are you going to put them together?
let's see what this height is.
You're comparing their heights.
Well, let's see how big the height.
You want to see how big they are.
This one's bigger, the green one's bigger.
The green one is bigger than the blue one.
Yeah.
You felt it, feel the difference.
Yeah. So now we just put the small green ones on the bottom.
You're putting the smaller one on the bottom.
Yeah. Smaller green. And the smaller green.
You need to put the smaller green one on the bottom.
Yeah. And these are the 2 big ones.
Those are the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Putting the bigger ones on top.
It might be the same height.
They look like the same height to you.
But I think the green one's bigger than the blue one.
You felt the difference and the green's bigger again.
Now,
You're going to see what happens when you push those through.
now, and then you put these on first. And then you have these on first. That one is harder.
That's how you, putting that like that is harder.
Yeah. think he's,
Be more careful.
yeah, that's a little.
Try to put that in there. Pat that off. Turn that over. See if it'll fit better that way. Put it in there.
Now, it will be easier, because it's kind of big.
That one will be easier because it's bigger.
Yeah, it's blue.
It's bigger than the blue, so it's going to be easier. Grove, we have about 3 more minutes to play
Okay,
with me, and then you can keep playing.
okay.
I'm going to keep playing when I'm done. Put that there. Put that back.
And then it'll be easier.
It'll be easier.
Not really easier. No.
But not actually easy. I'm going to put that on top and did it that way.
No.
We found another way to do it.
No, yeah. I like that. See, I like this. Might be the same way.
We're going to compare the heights again.
Yeah. I should have put the
There. Another.
That's really easier.
Down on top. And pushing them together. They fell over. They fell over. You decided to get the red. We have about 1 more minute. Looking for the other piece. Found another piece.
The red might be bigger.
You think the red might be bigger?
Yeah.
More.
Now,
Come over and see.
this was easier. So I need this.
Make that one.
Another one.
It's ready to go.
I just making it steady.
Making it steady. Okay, Grove, I'm going to talk to the students,
Okay,
and you can keep playing.
okay,
All right, if you need anything, you can ask me a question, or you can talk to them if you want to.
okay.
Okay. Okay. So what did you all observe? I'll tell you a couple of decisions I had to make. One was when the toys were falling over, and he kind of, I don't know, I was right down with it, it was probably hard for you to see from there, but he kind of, I intentionally decided not to reflect any frustration, because I'm not actually trying to encourage that. It was a fleeting moment, And he was more curious than frustrated, so I didn't want to lift it. So I was really focusing on the curiosity. It was a decision. There are plenty of people who could say, why not just go ahead and label it? Because then he at least knows that feeling is a part of learning. So we could have called it either way. I opted not. Also, he's not engaging in a ton of therapeutic play. If you notice, let's think about what he chose and how he chose to use it. What did you all notice? If you were to pick up themes of his play, what would you say you noticed? Yes.
There was a lot about sorting.
Sorting.
Figuring out the uses for different things.
Right.
Seeing how things that were similar were a little bit different.
Right. So comparing, sorting, figuring out. Right. So he's engaging in really play about curiosity and understanding, which would be different than a lot of relational play where he's clearly working something out. So if that's happening, the labeling of emotion is going to become even more important, right? Because then they've got some words to go with that feeling.
I noticed that it was very, very non-directional. Even when he asked you a direct question about where something was, what something was called, you just reflected it back at him and had him make his own decisions.
Yes, and that's difficult, particularly when he's asking about a serrated edge. My temptation is to say, that's called a serrated edge, but we're not teaching, right? This is a different format. There's nothing wrong. The other concern I have is going too far. He asked me, how many times did he ask me? It was a lot. And it felt a little bit like I'm frustrating him. And so if it got to the point where he had become more frustrated, I probably would have broken out of non-directive and said, I call that a serrated edge. But he did go back and look at it more carefully after I wouldn't answer. He started putting his fingers on it, and you could see he was thinking about it a little bit differently. So I felt like that was okay to have gone that far and let it go back to that.
So
Yeah, he's right, yeah.
Just out of curiosity, if he had become very outwardly frustrated with something, would you have attempted to de-escalate that, put a name to it?
So what I would have said is, you're frustrated. I would have reflected it, or you're frustrated or angry, whatever the reaction was. That I'm not answering that question. You really want me to label that for you, and then I would have given him the option. I can label for that if it's important to you. I can label that for you, and then put it back on him to do that. Yes.
How often and how much do you recommend that your clients do this with their kids?
So so filial therapy would be where I would teach a parent to do what I'm doing. And that would depend on exactly what we're doing, but you would want at least 7 to 10 sessions. We did a practice session, and the difference in his play between just the first session on Saturday and now, the level of direction he asked was probably 10% of what maybe even 5% of what he was asking me the first. What is this? How do you do this? There was a lot more confidence building. He was opening a lot of things, saying, I did it. This time he didn't need that as much. So you can really see from session to session how that changes, but with the filial, you want enough sessions so that the parents can see a difference and that they get a little more comfortable with the play, because he hasn't engaged in a lot of imaginative play yet, and that might take him some time. Since he doesn't need to, therapeutic play, they might get it a little earlier, but he hasn't needed that. If I were, let's say I was the parent and I'd seen this play, I would definitely want at least 5 more sessions so that we could start seeing some of that imaginative play coming in. Yeah.
But do you have the same toys every section?
You do. You have the same toys each time. This is as basic as it gets. So this is a filial therapy kit in a playroom. You would have a lot of different things. You would have more stuffed animals. You'd have more symbolic toys. You might have a little kitchenette. A lot of places where the things that are happening in their lives can come through. And one of the things I did ask was about this toy here. I made sure to talk to his parents to make sure that's okay. It is standard in a play therapy kit because it can work something, working out power, there's a lot that they can work out through it. If a parent opts out of that, which is totally fine, I do insist that there at least be something like this. We need something to symbolize aggression, and as you can see, he had nothing to sort there. I mean, nothing. He really was much more focused on the sound and that light that was in it. So he was looking at it real experimentally, wanting to figure out what was creating that light, what was making that light happen.
I was just about to ask about that. So how would you as a provider deal with an escalated situation where the child is either expressing those kinds of things towards you or towards other people in the room, throwing things?
Right, so so if he had pointed that at me, I would say, that, whatever, however he labeled it, that is not pointing at me, you can point it at the wall. So it would be a consistent redirection. If he's throwing something that can't be thrown, that's not for throwing, you can throw the paper. You always have something that can be destroyed. So this is the drawing pad. I used to have those egg cartons, because that's something they can throw or destroy. So they need something they can destroy. It wasn't as important in this case because I wasn't concerned about it, but I think having, if I were really going to start doing this, I probably would add a few things I haven't thought through. I did add this in between because I think the more kitchen kind of stuff where they can make things for you, or that's also important. Because really the toys are, remember, selected, not collected. So everything is very intentional to use as helpful. Often there's a sandbox in a toy room. That would be a standard thing. You can't really transport it. There's really nobody cleaning up sand today. But I think I may have told you, it's interesting, he didn't open it. So this was not interesting to him. So, but for some kids, they will build elaborate battles. And did I say I had a client who used these to build these elaborate battles, and he kept losing. Did I tell you about this? And my supervisor intervened and said, you need to make it so that you need to support him because he's starting to develop some hopelessness. So that would, where he's indicating hopelessness, but I needed to introduce the hope because they kept getting buried. So that's where I'm not purely non-directive. I think it's a great place to start because you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot. And I think you all can probably see a bit of a sense of how things are pretty ordered in his life. He likes that order. He's pretty comfortable. So the non-directive gives you a start, and you would use that for 6 and under.
I saw you remove the rubber band from.
Yes.
But if a child was really, like with the house, for example, wasn't able to get it open,
Right.
or get it outside, would you?
Yeah. And I removed the rubber band because it wasn't supposed to be there. So it was going to be tricky for him that with fine motor skills to do it. I could have, again, it was another decision. Do you go with the pure non-directive and have him pull it off? You don't want to start off your non-directive things with little tests for them like that. So I just opted to pull it off. But let's say if developmentally he can do it, then it's reflecting what's good. When you start breaking it down, saying you're pulling that there, they stay in that mode. They don't, and then you can reflect the feeling of frustration. I would go as long as it didn't seem to be, it's a judgment call of how escalated he was. Let's say he became escalated to the point, or a client became escalated to the point where I thought this was not helping. I would say, you're getting frustrated, sounds like you want some help. How do you want me to, what do you want me, I would have them direct me so that they're still in charge of it, but that I can help them. If I need to intervene in a specific, of course I would. So it's, because the idea is not to be so pure that we're creating something really frustrating. But it's also, I can tell you, and I don't know if you all felt it, I figure you probably did watching, when he's doing things that you could do like that, there is an impulse to just, I mean, it's a real exercise in patience. I mean, you all, this play, it can be sometimes more dramatic. This wasn't the most dramatic session, and that requires that attention and patience. But I think you could feel the level of attention. I really mostly forgot you all were here. And he did too. He did too, which I did not know. I mean, there was a chance he could say, I'm not doing this, and we would have met really early on. Because I'm not going to pressure anybody to do anything. And I figure we could have used that as a learning situation.
Sometimes watching other modalities that we've seen on video feels sort of tension-filled. Maybe you're kind of anticipating, and it's not without, sort of understanding and watching the tension that you sort of take in the tension. This is sort of the opposite of that. It felt kind of hypnotic.
Yeah.
And just watching the full presence. Is the act of doing it as relaxing, or do you feel like it is tiresome to have to stay tracking and figuring out these judgment calls of what to respond to?
I think it's not tension-filled for me. It is a discipline to maintain the attention, but it's probably much more boring to watch than to be in it, because you just don't know what's going to happen next, and you're constantly learning more about this person through their play. The best way to understand a child is through their play. I mean, that's how you're going to learn the most about who they are, what's important to them, and having the trust that they'll work through what they need to work through requires a lot of faith and belief. And that has come to me through experience, because I see how, I've seen how much healing kids do for themselves. Again, this isn't a situation that's requiring much healing, but but I have seen confidence building, because he's the youngest of 4. So he's, like I said, the first session, how do I do this? How do I do that? I mean, constantly. We hardly heard that today. And so just that leap from one session to me is pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Was he in a situation where his brothers were around, or his siblings were around him?
No, we did it at my house, which is, he's been to my house, but it's less familiar. So we wanted him to get used to doing this in an unfamiliar situation. Yeah. And the same thing, the same rugs, I tried to set it the same way. So he could transfer and not be too uncomfortable. Yeah.
So do you work with children that don't really have like a lot to work through a lot, or like do you know?
My background was at the community services
Right,
board.
yeah.
So I worked with kids who had suffered mostly pretty severely.
But you think that it has a lot of benefits for like all children?
I think it has benefits for all children. And the reason is just what I was saying, that first time, it's a different way of interacting. And then I spent time with Grove afterwards. We got we did lemon juice and lime juice one day. And we were experimenting with which was more sour. And I noticed how much teaching, how much anticipating, how much I would do the impulse was to do for him. But because we had just had this time, I was doing it less. And I think that's where the parenting comes in. If you work with parents and they have, even if the kid isn't responding as much to the sessions, the parents getting in a rhythm where they're incorporating more time for a child to interact. So,
In essence, it feels like you're teaching the parents, when you're doing the filial, to have patience, to grow patience and presence with their child, because, look, it's so respectful, they're never wrong.
So this is the power of what we talk about, right?
So is this the kind sat down meeting only for one child, or would you do like two siblings? Or
You can do two siblings, which I have not done. It just felt like too much for me. You know, I just wasn't quite there. But yes, you could. And you know, I could experiment with. He has a 6-year-old brother who's very jealous that he's not doing it. He declared that he would be excellent at teaching college students. And is not really sure why Grove was selected. And Grove was selected because 6 is the age, but he's getting towards the age where it is not quite it's a little harder for them to be at the moment. If I could have managed it, it would have been interesting to have both and see developmentally the difference. But how do you isolate one from the other? Unless he is in school.
What's your observation about how verbal a client would be in the situation when it was therapeutic play versus growth? Because he sort of positioned himself always pretty close in proximity. He wanted to come and be near you and sort of be playing in your space. And then he talked a lot. I mean, that seemed to increase. Is that your experience with clients?
Yeah, it's interesting. He talked more the first time, and I think that's just knowing that people are moving. So he actually was a slightly less verbal than he was before. I've had clients completely be almost non-verbal. And then I've had others that just talk. And it to me, it's either way. You know, it's they're engaged, they're completely engaged in their play. So it just depends on and over time, they're going to be less verbal. Usually, the opposite of what he did, which was more verbal first and less verbal later. Usually, they get a little more verbal, a little more comfortable. I was a safe point for him today, so he was closer to me than probably most kids would be initially, although some kids who've had trauma will not want to leave. If they've been in a safe situation, they recognize that you're safe. Yeah.
What would you do if a kid was so verbal that you couldn't get any of the cracking in between their words?
Let's see. I don't think I've not run into that, but this reminds me about the tracking. So I tracked less today. As a demonstration, I thought about tracking more, but I thought, no, I'm just going to do it the way I do it because you want enough tracking so that they know that you're paying attention, but you don't have to track everything constantly. So it's a balance that's different for different therapists, and probably with a more verbal kid, I might track a little less just because we're engaging a little bit differently. So to me, tracking is about engagement. It's not about, there's a certain, you have to do it a certain number of times, or it has to be this way, or they are learning